All right, guys, thanks so much for listening to another episode of the CX Chronicles Podcast. I'm your host, Adrian Shizana, and I'm super excited today, guys, to have Ivaylo Yorgov join the show. Ivo is the managing director at GemSeek, and he's got a super cool story. His business does some pretty incredible things, and it's right up our alley, guys, because Ivo and his team are building a bunch of awesome solutions and technology and service sets inside of the customer experience space. So, Ivo, why don't you say hello to the CX Nation, my friend?
Hello, everyone. And Adrian, it's a good thing that we have this on record. Now I can use it as a testimonial to the stuff that we do. Hello, everyone. My name is Ivo, and I'm super excited to be talking to Adrian today. And I hope that you'll find our conversation insightful.
So, Ivo, I'm pumped to have you on, man. So, guys, Ivo and I were chatting the other day leading up to today's show, and he's got a super cool business. His team is, as I just mentioned, doing some really interesting things in the space. And I think today, some of the things that we're going to talk about, I think are going to give you guys a lot of different ideas. So we're going to be talking about this idea of, proactive customer experience, right? We're going to be thinking about how we can get better at becoming predictive with what our customers are thinking or what our customers might be feeling about our products or services and our businesses. So, Ivo, why don't you take the mic, man? Set the stage for the listeners. Give us the 5-minute overview. Number one, of how did you get into this whole space, right? How did you become a customer experience professional? Number one, and then number two, definitely give us a sense for how did you and your team start to build GemSeek?
Yeah, thanks a lot, Adrian. Well, as many other things, you bump into the things that you find insightful at some point, right? So we didn't exactly had this kind of a vision that we're gonna start and we're gonna be $100 million CX company, but it kind of grows into you. I think I personally started working in the customer experience domain while I was at a previous company. So I was kind of the owner of this sphere in the country that I used to work for, and then I joined GemSeek. GemSeek was then in its infancy, I would say, and as any startup, we're a little bit wondering, which way should we go? Because we know that we have the capabilities, we know we do market research well, we have a data science team, but what exactly should we do? Should we help companies with customer experience? Should we do branding? Should we do all of these things? Or maybe we shouldn't be doing all of these things at all, and maybe we should focus on sales forecasting, and more on the data stuff. So it took, I think, as pretty much any startup, I'm gonna say, it took some years of pivoting and adjusting to this. But I think quite early on we had kind of this hunch that customer experience is gonna be then probably the next big thing, if you will, in the market intelligence or in the business domain, more broadly speaking. And I think we had kind of this vision that we want to work in this domain because it's, for me personally, it's one of the few areas in business in which you truly seek for win-win solutions with the customers.
Absolutely.
Yep. So it's not just like, we're going to blast advertisements on TV and we're going to have billboards and internet advertisements and stuff like that. So it's more about how can we become better in what we do so that our customers can benefit from it. And then we're going to reap the benefits of our customers being happy with us. In that sense, I think it also needs to connect with your values, right? So in that sense, I'm very much looking for win-win solutions as much as I can. So it kind of also fits with me and with my colleagues on a very personal level. So long story short, I think it's in the beginning we had some doubts whether we should go into this business or not. But a couple of years later, I think we realized that yes, that's what we want to do because we want to help companies actually deliver better customer experience, which also helps customers. So in that sense, you have both kind of the more social purpose, but you also have the business purpose in that sense.
Sure.
It just strikes the right balance for me and for my colleagues.
I love it. I think, well, number one, there's a couple of things that you just said that I think are spot on and just such a great starting point for today's discussion. But I think the first part is like the win-wins, right? The win-wins. So wins for the business, wins for the employee, wins for the customer. That's just a no-brainer, right? If you can focus on simplifying things and having win-win scenarios as a business, chances are you're probably going to do pretty well, right? Financially, from a sales perspective, from a retention perspective. But there's another thing, man, that I'm thinking about is like, as you kind of set the stage for what the GemSeek team is doing and how you guys found this space and how you kind of wanted to corner this area is like, I think that, like I say this stat all the time, it's on our CX Chronicles website, but in the US, Ivo, companies are losing 100 billion a year due to poor customer experiences, or due
Yeah.
to consternation within their customer journey, or due to technology breakdowns or service breakdowns, et cetera, right? Or opportunities where businesses don't strike on the ability to upsell, cross-sell, or retain so that they can actually max out their LTV, right? This is a space that I think is like, number one, we finally got a ton of, I think, international agreement and just general focus that the biggest companies in the world are investing in CX right now. No doubt about it. They're investing in customer experiences, and they're investing in their teams of people that, or their partners like a GemSeek, that are going to come into a business and really try to help them understand what the end-to-end journey looks like, and then how you got to get really, really good at tracking, measuring, and managing what's happening within that journey. So I love you guys. But you're
Indeed.
talking to a guy who loves the space.
Indeed. And you just reminded me, that these things are fixable. And that's the other thing I love about customer experience. These things are very often are very easy to fix. You just need to have kind of you just need to have the will to do it, because it's oftentimes with customer journeys, as you said, it's oftentimes very small things. I was just trying to change my internet supplier at home. I live in the Netherlands. My Dutch is rudimentary at best, but you know what? Even for this multinational company, everything is in Dutch. And I'm like, in Amsterdam, 33% of the people are expats. They probably, most of them don't speak Dutch, and you don't have an English support. You don't have an English website, at least something, And that's a very mindful thing, of course. But then I go to the site of the water company here in the Netherlands. It took me 5 steps, and it took me 45 seconds to do it. Do exactly the same things. And it was amazing. And I was talking the other day, just to give another example, I was talking to the head of customer experience to a very large chemical company. And you typically wouldn't expect this type of B2B companies to have an amazing customer experience. But he said, like, when someone contacted us over email, these guys didn't receive an automatic reply. They just didn't get a notification that they have sent the email and that they're going to reach out to them in like 3 days or something like that. And this guy said, I saw that, and it was solved by the end of the week. Because essentially what he did was, like, you call the IT guys, you set up such a system in place. Now everyone, when they contact them or send them an email, receives an automatic reply that, yes, they're going to reach out in 5 days. It's that simple. And a lot of things are like that, I think, in our domain. And that makes it also very exciting, but you need to dig a little bit deeper, and to pinpoint exactly what's the important stuff.
100%. I think, it's funny. It's here at CXC, Ivo, we work with a lot of growth focused companies. So many of these companies, maybe they've just found a specific market or a specific need that they're feeling really well, but they're still in that earlier stage, right? They're still acquiring customers. They're still thinking about really kind of laser focusing on what the ICP is, or what the ideal customer profile looks like. But what I was going to say is a big part of what we help them and what we work with their CX or their customer success teams on. It's some of the stuff that you're helping these larger companies with, which is it takes companies time to figure out, number one, how to start to just touch your customers in multiple different points. But then it also takes some time for companies to get really good at thinking about, I guess, just the usability or the engagement information that's, as me and you were talking about the other day, this stuff's sitting right at the fingertips. If you set it up appropriately, if you have the right systems, if you've got the right management visibility, meaning you show your leadership or you show your customer management, your contact center management, what to be looking for, like what signals, what leading indicators that's where you start to get into this predictive stuff, right, guys? Like, if you get good at figuring out what the steps are before an event or an action actually is going to happen, you can get a bit predictive around maybe whether it's a good activity that's going to happen, or maybe a bad activity, where you start to see signals around that. So I love that, that's the type of stuff that you guys are building. Ivo, I'd love for you, and I know you're going to kind of get into some of the stuff you guys are doing with your clients, but I'd love to jump into the first pillar, team. Can you give us a sense take a couple minutes to just give us a sense for, as you built out the GemSeek team, and as your team has grown, and right now you guys are working with some pretty incredible companies, but give us a sense for how you started to kind of lay out the players on the pitch, and how you started to kind of understand which roles or which teams you really needed to kind of bring into the scope to start building out some of the solutions that you guys offer at GemSeek.
Yeah, I think that basically relates to our vision of what a good customer experience program means. and basically what our clients need. And I think they're going to need, I think, and inherently a little bit in our industry is that there are a lot of companies, but every one of them does slightly different things. So, you have the market research companies, you have the text analytics companies, and then you have the data analytics companies, and then you have platforms and all that. And from the perspective of a client, and as you said, we work with companies like Philips and the Signifies and the Heidelberg Cements of this world, pretty large companies. I think it's very beneficial for them to have it as a one-stop shop, basically. So to have a partner who can work with them in building the whole customer experience program. So you don't just have a tool, you don't get a screwdriver here and a hammer there, and I as a client need to assemble all of that. No, we give it assembled to you. We can start working with you from the A and B and take you to the Z and Y, basically. So our thinking is we started from the quite traditional market research, if you will, and we still do a lot of it, and that's absolutely a viable business, and I think you generate a lot of insights from market research. We also had in the very beginning also a data science team, and that team has grown only stronger in time, of course, and you can think about all the machine learning and the artificial intelligence, and I think that basically that's the future of it. And it's going to become much stronger. But in time, we also added text analytics, because again, as we discussed in our preliminary conversation, there is so much insights that are hiding in plain sight, as you say. People say a lot of things in forums, in websites, in blog posts, in videos, on the web pages of e-tailers, basically. So if people are saying or voicing their opinions there, why do you need to go and ask them? You don't. You just go and read it, what they have said. So it's a lot about gathering these insights as well. And then what we started doing is also helping companies with the implementation of their customer experience platforms, like Medallia and Qualtrics and InMoment, for instance.
Okay.
These platforms, they're amazing, but you need someone to sit with you and basically make it work for you, if you will.
Yes.
Make it work for the company. So that's what we started doing as well. So, and all of that kind of the consulting element, where do you start? Do you start from market research? Do we start from text analytics, data analytics, from platform? All that consulting element so that you can get all the bits and pieces together at the end of the day for maximum impact. That was kind of the vision from the very start. And I have to tell you, it's a difficult thing to do because you have basically a lot of capabilities under the same roof. So. You understand how which profiles do you need as you go along. So for sure, you need very analytical people. It's an analytics business, so from the very start that you're going to need people who are very good with data. But one thing is creating the data. So that means a lot of market research, if you will. Second thing is data management. Data management, I think, is going to be absolutely critical in the future as we have more and more and more data. It's going to be vital that you have someone who can structure it in the right way, and then you need to have someone who can run the analytics on top of that data. So you need very good data scientists, and you need people who can work with the data to run the statistical analysis that are needed. And then on top of that, you need people who can make sense out of it. So people who are able to do storytelling, who can sit with a client, and take all of the different bits and pieces of analysis that we have done. As I mentioned, we do have a lot of capabilities. So someone needs to combine that. And the person who combines that needs to have, very good presentation skills, and you need to have storytelling skills. You need to be able to sit together with a client, understand their business, and tell them, this is the lever that you need to push. So it's already 4 different kind of profiles. In this whole process, I think project management, for example, is absolutely vital to ensure the very smooth flow of everything within the company. So and when I say these things, it's slightly different when it comes to market research versus data science versus text analytics versus a platform. But by and large, you're going to have these kind of profiles within your company. I don't know, that was probably a very long answer to your question.
No, that's fantastic. No, it's fantastic, because I guess here's what I was immediately thinking is, like, for some of our CX and our CS listeners, like, number one, what Ivo just laid out for us there. Number one, how many people actually have those types of capabilities at their fingertips? I bet you all of our listeners right now, Ivo, are going, I wish I had the data science piece. I wish I had the analytical support piece. I wish I had And then oftentimes what happens, I know, again, with a lot of the growth companies that we're working with and a lot of the folks that are listening here, you've got your poor VP of CX or CS or your director of CX or CS. This guy or gal gets stuck with, hey, just go do all of that plus manage this entire book of customers. So as a professional group, Ivo just laid out like what the dream model looks like for if and when and where you as a CX and a CS leader can really begin to, especially once you're in control of your budget, guys, right? And once you're really in a position where your leadership team trusts you, understands you, and is going to give you the $1 million, the $2 million, the $5 million, the $10 million a year that's going to go into managing this team extremely well. But Ivo, no, that long answer was perfect because it laid out, I think, what a dream state Cadillac situation looks like for a lot of us. And I know that I know this from a lot of the conversations that we have with folks in this show, and I know from just from a lot of the friends that we have in the CXC community. People are trying to figure out how to get their leadership teams to invest in some of the things that you just laid out for us. And I'll tell you right now, it's not always easy, Ivo. You know that, man. It's different for every business and every leadership team.
Yeah, I think that's the holy grail, right? How do you convince people to invest in that? And unfortunately, there is no silver bullet to it.
Right.
I think we all know the more obvious things. That we need to show quick wins and all of these things, and that's very good advice. But is there kind of a recipe that's going to work in all situations? To be honest with you, I don't think so. It's going to differ company by company. Some companies, as I mentioned, we do a lot of work with B2B companies and a lot of work with medtech companies, and you wouldn't typically associate this with having amazing customer experience programs, but they do. They have teams of 5-10 people, managing and acting as advocates for the customer within the company, and that I find pretty amazing, if I'm honest. But it starts from the top, and oftentimes, the C-level people are convinced themselves that it is actually important to invest in customer experience. So it's a battle, but I don't know, for any reasonable business these days, I don't think it's such a hard battle, simply because it's become common sense that yes, you put customers first and you reap benefits out of it. Yeah,
100%, man, 100%. Couldn't agree more. And I one last bit on this before we jump into tools, but I think this is why so many CX and CS leaders are craving or demanding or positioning to their leadership teams the need for all of those different facets that you laid out for us, right? The data science, the analytics, the storytelling piece, and then the actual working of it. Like how do you work it into action, right? Into your current processes. This is why you have so many CX and CS leaders demanding additional CX and CS or analytical operations. They need extra help. They need extra firepower. They need extra visibility into some of the possibilities of what your customers or sometimes even your builders, your employees, but typically your customers, what they're already telling you that you just need a little bit of help figuring out how to make sense of so you can put it into action. So I love it, Ivo. Ivo, I want to dive into the second CX pillar of tools. And this is cool because you guys have some really cool tools that I want to chat about that you guys are building at GemSeek. But let me ask the question openly for you, and then you give us the best answer you can. But every company has to think about how they build out their own tech stack just to be able to grow and to scale and to find their own customers. But you guys work with some huge companies that probably already have massive tech stacks that they've probably invested a lot of money in. I'd love to just kind of hear how you and the team think about tools. So if you want to answer it more internally about how you and the GemSeek team are using it, or if you want to talk about the customers, I'd love to just kind of, on your journey working with all these different companies, how do you really kind of think about, or how do you think our listeners should be thinking about how to kind of think about what type of tools are going to kind of get you to where you want to go, or just thinking about tools in general at a high level around how to kind of be thoughtful as you're scaling out your tech stack or your toolkit as you grow as a business leader?
From a GemSeek perspective, we try to be really lean, to be honest with you. So we use the technology that we need, and we try not to expand it unnecessarily, because at the end of the day, there are tons of tools that are going to help you with to run your business. But fortunately enough, we have still managed to keep it kind of, I'm gonna say contained, but what I mean is manageable, really.
Okay.
So
yep.
And that leads me to the side of the clients, basically. And what I've seen on the client side, it's exactly as you say. They just buy technology, and every team's got a different technology. And then how do these technologies integrate? That's an enigma for everyone.
That's somebody else's problem down the line, right?
Exactly. Yeah. And I think in our line of business, and I think that's a problem that more and more of our clients also recognize, that yes, these tools help. They help collect data. They help disseminate insights. but unless you can tie them together, you're in a really bad place, because I've spoken with clients. One of our solutions is to predict basically what customers are gonna feel and need in the future, and it's an amazing tool, and we need data for that. And I've asked the client, do you have this, and this data? And he said, yeah, we have it in 5 different places, which is immensely difficult to manage. It's difficult for them because they want to do it. They want to go for that kind of proactive approach that you described in the beginning, and I think we're going to talk about it a little bit later. But how do you do it if all the bits and pieces sit in different places?
Yep.
So from my perspective, it's not even so much about the technology itself, but rather how do you make very good use out of it? And I think very good use out of it is, can you connect it? Can you connect the pieces to each other? And I think that's a trend that we're seeing more and more within the industry. So even like customer experience measurement software, it integrates most of them integrate rather seamlessly with other systems, so with CRM, for example, or any other systems that might exist within the company.
So I mean, I'm glad you called this out, Ivo, because it's crazy how many companies and it's crazy how many leadership teams. So number one, that you'll come into a client engagement and you'll start to talk about, let's just say, help us understand what tools or what technology you've invested in to this point. And they'll say, Adrian, we've got the top of the line stuff. We've got our Salesforce, we've got our Zendesk, we've got our Slack setup, we've got we've got everything hooked up to our ERP, right? And then you go to the next question. You go, okay, perfect, great. You've already made all these investments. Let me see how you're gathering or how you're aggregating your voice of customer pulse or your drumbeat. So if you've got all these tools, fantastic, great. You've spent all this money on it. Let me see how you're aggregating the voice of customer. And then usually they go, well, that's why you're here. We spent all this money. We don't know how to show what we're actually doing. And it's crazy, Ivo, how many, and this is even with companies that absolutely no negative talk to them at all. It's just, they're typically so focused on growing and scaling and finding new customers, finding new users, that they forget to have somebody that's able to help you aggregate this stuff and then make sense of it. And to your point, you just mentioned about start connecting the damn dots. That is a different ball game. It really is. It's a different thing. And having all these tools, having all this technology, that's just one part of it. Somebody's got to be, not just somebody, that a team of people, especially in a large company, a whole department of people needs to be thinking about the connecting the tissues and the bones and really kind of making sense of it. And I want to go back to something you said in the team
I think we sorry to interrupt, Adrian. I just think that we oftentimes think that technology makes us better in what we do. But it takes very little of experience to realize that that's not the case. I'm also a runner myself, so even if I buy the best running shoes in the world, I'm never gonna win a marathon. It's just because it's not that. And I'm also into photography. Like I can buy a super expensive camera, but I cannot take the best pictures in the world because it's not about the camera. It's about how I use it.
100%. Yep. No, you're absolutely right. Ivo, I want to jump into there's one last thought on this, which is super interesting. I think one of the things that I want our listeners to be thinking about, because Ivo just said something that made me think about this. If you think about global software utilization rates, and I know I might have brought this up on some past episodes, guys, but I can't get off this idea, which is like, if you look at global SaaS sales, it's extreme, right? By 2028, there's reports that suggest that globally we're going to be spending $750 billion annual just on our SaaS, right? Just on our technology. But then if you there's some reports out there that if you look and you see utilization rates across even the biggest companies in the world, mid-sized companies, and then growing emerging companies, these utilization rates are in the 20 to 30% range. So on one hand, to your point, Eva, you got everyone thinks just because I buy the technology, all the fixes will come from it. Absolutely not. It's like buying the technology is the first part of it, and then employing or engaging with like an entire captain and crew of people to steer that boat. That's the second part of it right there.
Yes, and that's why 5 years ago, what we started is kind of a separate line of business, a separate capability, is basically having people who help companies work with the technology. So people who can set it up for you, people who can work with that and all that. And by the same token, that's why we have focused a little bit on the sense making, if you will, out of the data, and consulting companies, because the tool is there. And I'm not saying that the company needs to know how to use it in a perfectly, but that's what we're, if you have the tool, we can work with the tool for you, and we can also work with other tools for you, so that you, dear client, can focus on sense making, if you will, and making changes within the business. And I think that's critical. It's like a Formula One car.
Totally.
So you have the car, but you also need to have the guys at the pit stop.
It's the crew, man. The whole pit crew, the whole
gonna enable you.
I love it. Ivo, let's dive into the third CX pillar of process. So as you've built GemSeek and as you've grown the team and grown your customer portfolio, how has process come into this for you and your leadership team and the folks that are really kind of running the day-to-day and the front end of the customer relationships built? But can you spend a few minutes just talking about the way that you guys sort of, I guess, evolve the way that your processes worked, or maybe even how you started to build out playbooks so that you as you grew the business, you sort of had predictability and consistency in the way that your team was serving your customers. Can you talk about process for a couple minutes?
Sure. It's a tricky subject for me, because that's kind of up until, let's say, 3 years ago, we almost didn't have any process, because we were trying, it's always this balance between how entrepreneurial do you want to be, how flexible, how fast do you want to move, and then how efficient do you want to be, and how many processes do you want to have. And I think in this kind of continuum, we've always erred a little bit on the, let's not have process, let's be entrepreneurial, let's chase opportunities and do stuff and all that. And I think that both me and the rest of the leadership team still believes that. But I think 4 years ago, maybe we set off on a journey in which we realized that yes, we can. You cannot manage a 200 people company like that. You cannot manage a 200 people company the way you're managing a 20 people company. So you do need the processes in place, because you want to ensure the consistency of quality to your customers at the end of the day. You can't rely on, this person is doing an amazing job. I want everyone to be doing an amazing job. So in that sense, we started doing two things. If you want everyone to be doing an amazing job, you teach them. So one of the things that's a huge pillar for us, basically, is learning and development. Simply because it's, tools and process can only take you so far. But then there is always this very large human element. A process or a tool is not gonna understand the insights for you. It cannot make the presentation for you. It cannot design a CX program for you. That's people who do these things. They cannot tell stories. It's people who tell stories. So I think we focused a lot on learning and development. So giving everyone kind of the infrastructure to learn and to develop into who they want to be. And next to that, though, you still need to have the kind of the infrastructure of processes and technology within the company. Now, from my perspective, you need to keep this kind of lean, if you will. You need to have it only where you need to really have it, instead of creating processes for process sake. So now we try to balance that, and I think we have quite good processes and technologies to support them, and that makes our lives easier, because you don't go to work, and just think every day, I need to do this. Okay, well, so what was the process, and who do I need to reach out to, and all that. So the foundation is there, but I think a very large part of that, of what comes next, is really learning and development. So that's kind of my passion for it, because as you say, as we discussed, I have a hammer and I have a screwdriver, but at the end of the day, I need to learn how to use these things. It's not like they work for themselves.
I really like the idea of using it's funny. This is an awesome answer, because typically when I ask people about process, they'll talk about what you're getting into as they grow and as they expand and as they scale, and as you go from maybe 10 or 25 or 50 people, but as you start to enter into the world of 100, 500, 1,000, they'll say process becomes more important as the team gets bigger. So you said same thing, but what I really liked about what your answer was right there is thinking about process as more of an educational element, thinking about it as more of a learning, a coaching. Here's the other thing, I'm just going to call it out there. I think because of COVID and because of all the things that we've all gone through as a planet together the last few years, employee experience and employee retention is
Mm.
becoming paramount. And then think about it. Every single solitary week for the last 3 months, there's another huge global company that's letting people go, right? So like the other thing that I love about this answer is like, for our listeners right now, if you're not the type of business or if you're not on the type of leadership team that's thinking about, hey, what's the employee investment or the employee retention play
Mm.
for 2023 for the new year? If you guys haven't already baked that into your 2023 planning, watch out. But second of all, that's a simple way of breaking process down. If process, because it's funny, a lot of the startup companies too that come on Evo, they say exactly the other part of what you said, which is like, we want to almost throw the chains of process off early so that we remain innovative and flexible and
Yeah.
agile and can kind of pitch and pivot. But what's interesting, I like this idea of process acting as like the kindling for learning, coaching, education. And then think about it, like that's the stuff that, like, if for anything, it's just helping your employees learn how they can better serve your customers or learn how they can better use your tech stack or your tools that you've already invested a ton of money in.
Yeah.
This is a great takeaway, guys, that everyone should be thinking about bringing back to their teams tomorrow, because like that's an easy one to start, at least to take a little bit of action on, or at least a little bit of thought around how you might be able to plot out what you can do this year in that regard for your customer evolution. So I really like that.
I hope so, Adrian. And I was just thinking, when you said innovation, it's obviously processes are important. You don't want to suffocate people, and you need to leave them space and all that. That's true. But at the end of the day, it's the creativity which actually brings innovation. And creativity is a skill that can be learned. So, for example,
Totally.
That's one of the things that you can do. Or let's say, at some point, I wanted our project managers to be more proactive when they talk to customers.
Totally.
And I wanted them to give our clients the feeling that they've got things under control, security and all that. And there is no process for that. I mean, we have a process and it says you need to reply to a client by this and that time. But it's how good of a project manager you are. It's how good of a job you can do that helps, not the process itself. The process ensures that kind of you have the handrail to hold. But how quickly you walk and stuff like that comes from learning and development. At least that's my view.
I like it, and it's just like a person, just like I'm thinking about like even like a baby or a toddler or a child, right? They all evolve at different rates. They all some start walking early, some start. So you're right. In businesses and entities are the same damn way. Some explode and they go from 4 or 5 years to $1 billion company. Some take 10, 15, 20, 30 years to get to $10 million a year in sales. Every business is it's got a different trajectory and a different speed. So I like that thinking of like, there's not a perfect answer for this, guys. Every business, every industry, every team is basically going to leverage and kind of think about process a little bit differently. Ivo, that awesome answer there, man. I want to jump into the fourth and the final CX pillar of feedback. I'd love to kind of understand. So how are you and the team at GemSeek kind of helping? And I know that there's a lot of ways that you're helping them, but I'd love to kind of just think about or hear how you think about the way that you and the team at GemSeek are helping your customers leverage their feedback better and get better at listening to what their customers say. And then I'd love to kind of understand how your team, how you and your leadership team at GemSeek leverage your employees' feedback to help grow and expand the business.
That's a very good point. And shall we just say, though, instead of feedback, why don't we use feed forward?
I like it. Okay.
Because it's like, we're very used to having this feedback, like I do something and then someone tells me how well have I done it. What if I know how well have I done it? Or what if I can predict how well am I doing? And I'm going back with this to your intro, basically, and to the being proactive element. Because companies these days, they have the tools, they have a lot of tools basically to gather feedback from their customers. I can file a complaint, I have a chat that I can use, I can call the company, all of these things I can do. So that's one thing. The second thing is you have a lot of companies obviously run their own customer experience programs. So they collect feedback, they send surveys, they collect feedback, and a lot of them actually, in a very good will, actually act on that, which is the very typical close the loop program process.
Sure. Yep.
Interestingly, though, what if actually without asking people, because all of that I described so far, that's all very good, but not everyone replies to surveys. Nope. So survey response rates are like 15%, 20%.
Super low, yeah, super low.
Exactly. So essentially, you're missing on 80% of your people. So you're missing the opportunity to talk to 80% of your customers. So what we did, and that's very, very interesting, I think, an exciting development in the last years. For a telco client of ours, we combine their survey data with their behavioral data and transactional data. So data they already have for everyone being a
Yep.
telco. You know? So what we were able to do is for every one of their customers to give them a score which says this person is likely to be a promoter or a detractor, for example. Hence, likely to quit in the next, to churn in the next 3 months, 6 months, whatever. Obviously, that's not perfect. It works with 80% accuracy, 90% accuracy. But what we can tell right now is, hey, Adrian, there is an 80% chance that Adrian is a detractor right now, even without Adrian responding to a survey. So what this allows them to do is to pick up the phone and say, hey, Adrian, how is it going? You've been a client of ours for 2 years. Are you facing any problems? Is there anything that we can do better? And so on.
Yep.
And there's a ton of studies that actually say that, being proactive is much better than being reactive in that sense. For two reasons. One is that, again, even if you have a problem and you don't tell the company, they don't know about the problem.
100%.
And second, you feel a lot better if someone does something for you without you telling them. I recently published a book about exactly proactive and personalized kind of customer service. And one of the stories that amazed me really was about this guy who said, Amazon had this service in which you can actually watch a movie together with your friend. You can watch it online, but both of you are watching the same movie at the same time. So he was saying, the streaming quality wasn't really good and so on, so things didn't happen that exact night. But he said, it wasn't a problem for me because it cost $3, something like that. So that's okay.
Okay.
What he said is 2 days later, he says, I receive an email from Amazon. And the email says, hey, we know that 2 nights ago you tried to watch a movie. We know that the streaming wasn't good. So here are your, $3 back. And that's proactive because Amazon knew actually that this guy had a problem with the streaming quality. And they proactively contacted him.
Yeah.
And he was the way he ended his blog post was all this extra loyalty for $3.
$3.
$3 because he was telling the story. I'm telling the story. Now everyone is going to hear about the story. And it costs $3, really.
Yep.
In that specific case, $3 plus the capability to be proactive in this.
Totally.
Because Amazon were proactive. They didn't wait for the guy to actually tell them that he had a problem. They went to him and they said, we know that we didn't, basically they said, we know that we didn't deliver. Here is your money back. And that I think creates an amazing kind of impression of the company. I can rely on these guys, because they know that I have a problem and they solve it for me before the problem actually comes. Or if I receive a call from my telco, and say, hey, I know that yesterday you didn't have internet at home and we want to do this and that for you. It's very simple things. And human behavior is, not entirely predictable, but it is predictable that, if I don't have internet in my home today for 2 hours, if internet breaks down right now, I'm going to be super pissed off. It's not rocket science. You know these things.
It's funny. It's funny that you're using this example right now because literally in my house this week, we just went through this with a very large cable and internet company. The only one that we even are able to buy, by the way, Ivo, which is a whole other conversation. But the same thing happened. Our internet was blotchy for about 4 or 5 days. And then yesterday they finally got the service tech out. They ended up having to do a line and do a new modem. So great. So you solved it. The problem is solved. What you just said, I've always been blown away by these huge companies that don't already proactively go and look at my prorated rate. They already know what my theoretical daily cost is on the 30 days of the month, right? Give me the 4 or 5 days back. Don't even ask me about it. And then certainly don't make me wait on a 1.5 hour phone call to try to go chasing those couple bucks. Just do it for me. You've seen that we've been a customer for 10 years, and I think, scaling that, we're talking about some of these like telco and cable company. Those are big, huge $100 billion company. Scale it back to small business. Think about even on a small business or on an emerging company, when the customer has a bump in the road, you typically know when a customer's got a little bit of a hairy situation that happens, whether it's maybe you see that they're not using the software properly, or maybe you felt on a meeting that the services weren't coming through the way that you sold them. So get in front of this stuff. The proactive part's so damn easy. And frankly, most customers just just knowing that they're working with a partner or a solution who is proactively trying to improve and engage and retain and just make sure that everything's going well, that makes you want to work with that company, right?
I think so. Yes, even if you can't solve the problem, you can just be there. You can acknowledge that something is happening, and you can tell them, our next step is gonna be this and that. Our brains kind of crave this predictability. We crave to be in control. We crave to know what's gonna happen next, especially when we've paid like, I don't know, $1,000 for something. I do want to know what's going on.
Absolutely. Yep. Ivo, this is fantastic, man. So before we wrap up, number one, super awesome ideas here, and then just super cool work that you and the team at GemSeek are doing. Before we wrap up, though, anything else you want to share with the CX Nation? Anything that you and the team are working on, upcoming events, new announcements, or new products that you're excited to kind of offer for 2023? Anything else that you want to share with us before we start to wrap up?
Yeah, I think what we're gonna keep going in this direction. I think a very good next step is not only knowing who's likely to be a detractor or an unhappy customer, but also what can you do about it. So identifying the root causes, but also automatically suggesting actions, not unlike the recommendation engines of all the big companies that you can imagine. So I think that's one area that we'll be focusing on. Late last year, what we did is, and I think it's a very social area, if you will. So some customers are very vulnerable in the sense that going through difficult times. It might be a divorce, a health issue, stuff like that. Yep. And I think, again, using text, you can very well identify these customers, so you can actually treat them differently from the others, simply because they have different needs. And that's one area that last year, just in the fall, we won a second place in one of the awards for something like that.
Fantastic.
It's still in its very infancy, but it's going to be super important, I think, for financial companies and insurance companies, because you want to help people make better decisions. So you need to know whether they're kind of distressed and stuff like that, so you can offer them a little bit of something extra, if you will. So in the field of data analytics, I think that's going to be key. And then again, I think it's going to be a lot about the integration of all that. So how can we consult our clients a little bit better through this whole journey that we discussed? Because at the end of the day, it's a never-ending journey.
It really is. And the last thing I just want to say, you guys, on the GemSeek website, and I know you're going to share with everyone where they can find that, but there's this idea that you guys talk about with the vulnerable customer experience, right? Vulnerable customer experience work. So like understanding areas of vulnerability is the first step, is pretty darn sensible, right? Anybody's going to understand. You got to understand what the potential problems are. Keeping up in the real time, though, that second step of keeping it up in the real time, where there's always a view of areas of vulnerability, and then that third part of being proactive and trying to be predictive. I think that those are three things that I love about what you guys are doing, and I think that any one of our listeners, if you could take those three steps into your own game tomorrow or even today, it's going to make an immediate difference. Ivo, where can people find you guys, and where can people learn more about GemSeek?
They can visit our website, GemSeek.com. They can always reach out to me, of course. I'll be happy to chat. LinkedIn is an amazing tool. So I would love to catch up with anyone who's looking to learn more. And of course, I'm also on my own looking to learn more. So if anyone's got good ideas, I'm very open to testing them and to giving them a go.
I love it. Well, Ivo, it's been our absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for coming on the CX Chronicles podcast. And I'm going to look forward to chatting with you again in the near future, my friend.
Thank you so much. We'll be in touch.